due to enemy attacks on the regions, the historic Louvre robbery, and treacherous weather. And I'll tell you more about this and other news. It's 19:30 on the clock. I'm Irina Kondrachuk, and you're watching TSN Online. Subscribe to our channel, leave a like, and be sure to write what interested you most. We're starting now. 62 attack drones were launched by the enemy over Ukraine last night. Most of them were Shahed-type UAVs. Gerbera drones also flew. Russians often use them as decoy targets for our air defense, as their production is quite cheap. The Russian Federation launched them from 5 directions at once, including Kursk, Oryol, and Primorsko-Akhtarsk. As of morning, Ukrainian aviation, anti-aircraft troops, electronic warfare units, and drone systems managed to shoot down or suppress 40 drones in the north and east of the country. But 19 enemy UAVs hit their targets in 7 cities. A wave of attack drones targeted the Chernihiv region. In the Pryluky district, an infrastructure facility and a fire and rescue unit were damaged. There were also hits on an energy facility in a border community. Approximately 17,000 subscribers in 2 districts were left without electricity. 4 people were injured in Sumy. The day before, at least 10 explosions were heard in the city. The enemy directed attack drones at railway infrastructure. A 32-year-old woman and a 20-year-old man sustained injuries. The train station building and railway cars were damaged. Another drone hit a gas station. 2 women were injured. An attack drone equipped with shrapnel was directed by Russians at a kindergarten. They also attacked a production workshop. And in the suburbs of Sumy, 10 houses were damaged by the explosion of a guided aerial bomb. In the Vorozhba community, a bakery was hit. In the morning, Russians shelled Tomina Balka in the Kherson region. A local resident who was outside at the time of the attack was injured. 3 more people were injured the day before in Osokrivka and Molodizhny. And in Kozatske, a man was killed. 2 injured in Zaporizhzhia. The enemy launched 700 strikes. Strikes from various types of weapons. A man and a woman were injured due to a drone attack in the Polohi district. 7 aerial bombs were dropped by the occupiers on Stepnohirsk, Novodanilivka, Dolinka, and Malinivka. They also shelled the region with drones and artillery. Russians launched a massive drone attack on the Dnipropetrovsk region. Shakhtarsk was affected. 11 people were injured there. At least 1 woman is in serious condition. The city suffered extensive damage. After the explosions, apartments in 3 multi-story buildings caught fire. The enemy deliberately targeted a residential area. In total, 7 multi-story buildings and almost 3 dozen cars were damaged, as well as a shop and an electricity pole.
The fire fell, my ass burned everything. It just burned well. Well, maybe they pulled me out, they managed. To my underwear, I almost burned a little. When we left the apartment, only the windows were broken and the doors didn't close. But all the furniture was intact. But today we came in the morning, everything is broken.
Shakhtarsk, attacked at night, belongs to the Pokrovsk community, where forced evacuation is currently underway. 18 villages have already fallen under it. All children must be evacuated from there. Previously, all miners were evacuated from the Mezhevska, Malomikhailivska, and Velikomikhailivska communities. The situation there is currently the hottest. Every day, the enemy attacks these settlements with KABs, Shaheds, and FPV drones. Dozens of houses are destroyed, schools, shops, post offices are ruined. Over the past 6 months, almost 20,000 residents have been evacuated from the frontline communities of Sinelnikivsky district, more than 4,000 of them children. Volunteers, police, and the state emergency service constantly urge people not to take risks and to agree to evacuation. They scolded them but still evacuated them. 28 times, volunteers evacuated the same family from Kupiansk in the Kharkiv region. But people returned home every time to look after their garden. This story was told to my colleagues from Suspilne by volunteers of the organization Troyanda na Rusi, who evacuate civilians from frontline territories. They say that when there was still mobile communication in Kupiansk, a local elderly couple repeatedly called them with a request to evacuate. Of course, they were evacuated, but then, in an incomprehensible way, the elderly found themselves back home in Kupiansk. They planted potatoes, dug in the garden, and the man was with us all the time. We argued a lot, and then we just gave up and took him, the volunteers recall. Usually after 3 such returns, volunteers send such people to a conditional blacklist, but these, they say, were soulful became friends with the drivers, and kept going. Eventually, the family settled in Kharkiv. In Shostka, Sumy region, energy workers, gas workers, and other utility workers are working around the clock. And the necessary equipment, including powerful generators, was brought from all over the country. All this is to restore electricity and water to the border town. In early October, Russian drones attacked Shostka's energy infrastructure. The city and part of the community plunged into complete darkness. And on the same day, an enemy drone hit a suburban train, and another one hit the regional Kyiv-Shostka train. Then one person died and dozens were injured. These were passengers and railway workers. How Shostka is recovering after massive Russian strikes and whether they are ready for winter. A report from Sumy region TSN correspondent Valentina Dobrota next.
The characteristic sound of a drone, which no one confuses with anything else, drives people into shelters. And here is an underground school. We ride 200 meters. Classes are held in 3 shifts, with 3 classes simultaneously. Each class has 3 to 4 lessons at school. The rest are online.
The last time children studied in the school building was in March 2023. Then the educational process was completely moved to the shelter.
Already on the surface, school principal Vyacheslav Vasilenko shows the forcibly abandoned classrooms. His hand automatically reaches for the light switch. Unfortunately, there is none. In Shostka, there are 2 underground schools, both built during the full-scale invasion. They are currently powered by diesel generators. In one of the lessons, children are studying types of power plants. It is these that Russian troops are insidiously destroying on the eve of winter. And students are forced to study underground. This was a large-scale drone attack in the city, which is 50 kilometers from the border. In an instant, light, water, and gas disappeared. The center of Shostka is still without electricity. They give light for a couple of hours and without a clear schedule. The city's transformer substations are also connected to the generators. And in this way, there is light in the high-rise buildings.
A lot, heavily damaged, very large. We reconnected some consumers from our networks. And at the moment, we are supplying electricity from our networks.
The director of the Shostka REM branch says that one 450 kilowatt diesel generator can power an average of 150 apartments. But for the entire city, with a population of 60,000, there is not enough capacity.
People turn on heaters and consumption increases significantly and the networks cannot withstand it.
For those who have electric stoves at home, it's unbearable, locals say. Moreover, the schedules for electricity and water supply do not coincide.
We live like all Ukrainians and we live like that. We have electric stoves. They give water and they give light for 2 hours. They give water, there is no light. They gave light, there is no water. Well, they set up points of invincibility, yes. Well, people come, they can get food there, they can warm up.
After another shelling, the city plunged into darkness for several days. Since then, field kitchens have been set up around the city. They are not removed, just in case.
We cannot predict. You just saw the situation when the Shaheeds flew and where they will remain on our territory, or if they will fly further.
The most vulnerable segments of the population continue to receive free meals. Come closer, come closer. On a bicycle because he can't walk anymore, Mr. Ivan came for food.
Well, what can I tell you? It's sad.
The man remembers the last war, so he says nothing can surprise him anymore. Which war was more insidious, that one or this one?
It was different. Now they are simply destroying Ukrainian people. Then for what? I don't know. I don't know what Ukrainians are for.
The owner of the store couldn't immediately recall when he last bought a generator before this blackout. Now this product is relevant again in Shostka.
We had electricity, we had gas, we had everything. There were no such sales at all. They just weren't needed. People are constantly coming and asking. There is a generator that can even be placed on the balcony. It's very quiet. Will it bother you? It will, but not like that. We'll have to survive somehow.
In just one day, the city council received 80 applications for partial reimbursement of the cost of purchased generators. The city plans to develop a similar compensation program for people buying potbelly stoves in the city council together with the state emergency service. They are already working on regulatory documents to allow stoves in apartment buildings.
Time will tell. What will we do and where?
But some of those we interviewed are still philosophical about domestic difficulties. Like Mr. Volodymyr, whose son and grandson are defending Ukraine.
There is a gas cylinder, and the heat will be visible. Maybe we'll put in a potbelly stove in the apartment. Is that serious? Yes, what else is there to do?
In Shostka's institutions with their own boiler rooms, the heating season has already begun. Mr. Serhiy also works in one of these kindergartens. And it was his first working day. Everything is working. It reaches 40, then we throw in firewood. In total, there are 17 educational institutions with alternative heating in the Shostka community. And children will be brought to them if the winter is too difficult.
We will create such centers where students can get an education in comfortable conditions. We have drawn up a schedule, compiled a list of equipment that we need to purchase to equip such educational centers.
When the city is fully powered, local energy workers do not dare to say that drones over Shostka are not just passing through.
In your presence, a Shahed drone flew by 3 times, destroying one enterprise just now, a small one, but it destroyed it. Right before your eyes. In your presence. This is what border life is like. This is life here on the border. And there's nothing we can do about it yet.
The head of Shostka says that the enemy is gradually driving the residents of the border area underground. In the city, in addition to underground schools, an underground hospital is also being designed. Valentina Dobrota, Mikhailo Putiata, TSN 1+1.
The enemy on the front is advancing through Dnipropetrovsk and Zaporizhzhia regions. Currently, according to deep state analysts, the Russians have approached the settlements of Filia, Malinivka, and Okhotniche. This is the Oleksandrivka front line, where a week ago the Kremlin transferred significant forces from Pokrovsk and Vitinka. At the same time, Deep State reported the day before that the Russians had already entered and occupied the outskirts of Pokrovsk itself. They are also accumulating forces in the forest north of Yampil, which is the Lyman direction. There, the enemy is trying to cross the railway and enter the settlement itself. But drones from the defense forces are not letting them out of the forest. The tense situation at the front is also evidenced by the fresh round-the-clock report from the General Staff. Over the past day, 223 combat engagements took place along the entire front line. Meanwhile, border guards showed the work of a drone unit that destroyed enemy positions in the North Sloboshansky direction. Their drones simply flew into the trenches and Russian deployment sites and destroyed everything there. Communication equipment, vehicles, shelters, and enemy personnel. And about enemy losses. Here are today's figures from the General Staff. Russian occupiers lost another 1,000 soldiers killed and wounded over the past day. In total, since the beginning of the full-scale invasion of Ukraine, the Russian army has decreased by 130,180 soldiers. Our defenders also destroyed enemy equipment. In battles, over 11,000 tanks and 23,000 armored combat vehicles were destroyed, as well as 33,834 enemy artillery systems. 45 of them were eliminated over the past day. Also, the day before, 444 tactical-level drones were destroyed. In total, 427 Russian aircraft and 346 helicopters have been shot down. And at sea, 28 ships and boats and 1 submarine were neutralized. Russians surrounded near Dobropillia and new attacks to unblock their troops. The enemy does not stop pushing equipment to our positions on the outskirts of Dobropillia and conducted 2 mechanized assaults in the direction of the villages of Volodymyrivka and Sofiivka within a week. The defense forces say they haven't seen such a massive attack in this direction for half a year because due to the drone onslaught from both sides of the front, equipment is almost not used in battles. Paratroopers of the 82nd Brigade involved in the assault on the Dobropillia salient call the mechanized attacks of the Russians nothing less than the last attempts to create a corridor to their own. What is happening on this hot section of the front will be further reported by TSN special correspondent Yulia Kirienko.
Look, the dugout started burning. Hold it so they don't start running away.
Just now, a Ukrainian drone hunted down a Russian position. Russian attack drones took off from there. There are no doubts, the soldiers say, because first they saw a communication antenna sticking out of the shelter, and only then the movement of the occupiers. So this is a clear target for destruction.
This will at least reduce enemy observation and allow us to strengthen our positions, which the enemy will not be able to exploit.
Our defense forces are storming a section of the front near Dobropillia and are consolidating their positions that were recently recaptured from the Russians.
For over a week now, an operation to clear these positions of occupiers has been underway here. If you want to help our soldiers do this even more effectively, you can donate to this fund for the 82nd Brigade unit.
If we take our Dobropillia direction, 30 Russians a day, that's the minimum of what has been confirmed by drones, what we observed. That is with the help of attack UAVs. Accordingly, mainly 80% with the help of UAVs, the enemy is destroyed.
The Russians found themselves surrounded here. At least that's the impression if you look at the deep state map. However, the paratroopers of the 82nd Brigade who arrived here for this operation a few months ago are more cautious with such assessments because the front line here moves daily.
What did we do? We cut it off. We cut off some part of it. We didn't do that so he couldn't pull up his reserves. We began clearing these areas where the enemy was spotted. He couldn't effectively support his troops with any artillery means, primarily because he went too far.
And the defense forces took advantage of this. This is the same section of the front that military observers called rabbit ears. This is how it looked 2 months ago when the occupiers went on the offensive. They occupied the villages of Zoloty Kolodiaz and Vesele. The commander of the 82nd Brigade's paratrooper battalion shows on the map. It is one of those who were transferred to this direction to push back the occupiers.
He went directly from Novotoretsk and then crossed the significant Dobropillia-Kramatorsk highway, which is indeed vitally important.
Alexander and Vasil stormed Zoloty Kolodiaz. The soldiers were mobilized not so long ago and underwent basic military training and have already managed to destroy more than one Russian near Dobropillia.
We entered the landing, saw that there were 2 of them. We started shouting at them to surrender. There were 2 of them, and there were a few more of us. And we started, a shootout. At about 30 meters, I personally saw them, shot at them. As I said, they didn't want to communicate.
Alexander shows his assault rifle. He received it as soon as he passed through the training center of the 82nd Brigade. The Belgian weapon did not fail in that battle, says the paratrooper, and they had to storm the enemy and then consolidate their positions for almost 10 days.
The Scar L, a Belgian assault rifle, is a good weapon. It's precise, accurate. We camouflaged ourselves and let them get as close as possible.
How close?
When they were already 50 meters from us.
Not all Russians willingly surrendered, say the soldiers, but the paratroopers have arguments to force the occupiers to retreat.
They didn't want to surrender at first. We have a method called the argument. 12 grams of explosives in a backpack. It's thrown into the strong point, and the strong point slowly starts to fly into the sky. 3 backpacks were thrown in there, and after the 3rd one, they realized they had to surrender. And they started shouting, "We surrender, we surrender."
Then the 82nd took 9 occupiers prisoner. Then they listened to the paratroopers' arguments. Now, a burning dugout is also on the screen. The Russians did not surrender, so they remained in it. In the Dobropillia direction, the paratroopers still have a lot of work to do, say the soldiers. Enemy infantry has significantly entrenched itself in forest belts and ravines, and Russian commanders are sending new forces into battle. The paratroopers withstood 2 mechanized assaults with dozens of armored vehicles and hundreds of occupiers in the last week alone. All the equipment burned in the fields near Volodymyrivka, a village that, by enemy design, was to open a corridor to their encircled forces and bypass our troops from the rear. But they failed to do so. Yulia Krienko, Alexander Shian, Ole Mostovi, TSN 1+1.
Not a day without bavovna in the swamps. On Sunday night, residents of the Orenburg and Samara regions of Russia observed a bright, fiery show. Thanks to the hit of peaceful drones, the Novokuibyshev oil refinery and the Orenburg gas processing plants caught fire. This was confirmed by the governors of the respective regions, Vyacheslav Fedoryshchev and Yevhen Sontsev. Local residents eagerly filmed the thick smoke and flames. Some Russians were particularly concerned that the burned-out refineries would not stink by morning. The Novokuibyshev oil refinery belongs to the Rosneft group of companies. Its capacity is almost 5 million tons of oil per year, and the attacked enterprise in the Orenburg region is part of the Gazprom group. Ukraine has repeatedly stated that hydrocarbon production plants in Russia are legitimate military targets as they supply the occupying Russian army with fuel. The General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine has already confirmed hits on Russian territory and also reports the destruction of a fuel and lubricants base in temporarily occupied Berdyansk in Zaporizhzhia. Ukraine is preparing certain steps on the front in response to the Russians for every one of their strikes. This was stated by the president during his Sunday address. As for Ukrainian strikes on the territory of the aggressor country, which Zelensky calls our sanctions against Russia, they are becoming increasingly far-reaching and accurate.
Regarding our long-range capabilities, there is an increase both in distance and accuracy of our long-range sanctions against Russia. In fact, every day or two, there is an impact on Russian oil refining, and this works to bring Russia back to reality.
Donald Trump was referring to the millions of protesters who took to the streets across America on Saturday. At least that's the conclusion after watching a video that appeared on the American president's social media. Artificial intelligence created a video in which the owner of the White House with a crown on his head is at the controls of a fighter jet. The animated Trump flies over the protests, and at some point, large brown chunks begin to fly out of his plane. This mass eventually heavily involves protest participants, and they clearly don't like it. This is how the US president reacted to the rallies called No Kings. They took place across the country and gathered up to 7 million participants, including up to 100,000 in New York. People are outraged by the curtailment of democracy and the increasing concentration of power in the hands of one person, Donald Trump. Trump's associate, Vice President J.D. Vance, reacted no less scandalously to the protests. He shared an animation where his boss, supposedly in a camisole and with a crown, raises a sword, and the most famous Democrats, including Nancy Pelosi, kneel before him. And what do you think of such a gesture from the US president? Did Trump surprise you this time? Be sure to share your impressions in the comments to this broadcast on YouTube. And of course, like and subscribe to the channel. Meanwhile, I continue the TSN broadcast. In 7 minutes, the Louvre was robbed and Napoleon's treasures were taken from the most visited museum in the world. One of them was found nearby. The crime was reported by France's Minister of Culture, Rachida Dati. The incident occurred early in the morning during opening hours. According to the BBC, 3 people participated in the robbery. They entered the building through an area where construction work was ongoing, ascended to the 2nd floor using a freight elevator, broke windows, and entered the Apollo Gallery. Masked individuals stole 9 precious jewelry pieces from the collection of Napoleon III and Empress Eugénie, which are considered part of the French crown jewels. Among them, specifically a necklace, a brooch, and a tiara. The robbers fled the Louvre on a scooter. According to preliminary data, one of the stolen treasures has already been recovered. This is likely the damaged crown of Empress Eugénie, which is impossible to appraise. It was found near the museum. The value of the stolen goods is still being calculated. Given that the price of gold has exceeded $4,100 per ounce, the stolen items could be melted down and sold as raw material by the perpetrators. The case is being investigated by the prosecutor's office, and the museum is temporarily closed. They drift on icy roads and block them with massive accidents. A record number of accidents occurred in Finland the day before due to a sharp deterioration in weather conditions. More than 50 cars were involved in chain collisions. Cars crashed into each other due to slippery asphalt covered with a layer of ice and impenetrable fog. The main incidents occurred in the cities of Lahti and Tampere. At least 35 people sustained injuries of varying severity. Police have opened 4 criminal proceedings related to accidents in the region, and they have already called it the largest chain collision in Finland's modern history. Meteorologists warn that due to temperature fluctuations around 0, the risk of black ice will remain high throughout the week. Drivers are urged to refrain from morning trips and maintain maximum distance on highways in the central and southern parts of the country.